Hello there. In this course so far we have dealt with quite a few organizations, the states, the global system, but we have not looked that much yet at the role of non-governmental organizations in global affairs. Today we will look into the role and activities of one of these organizations, actually Cordaid. I really have the pleasure to introduce to you today the Director of Security and Justice of the organization Cordaid, Hetty Burgman. So Hetty, could you tell us a little bit about the activities of the organization, and most notably, how does actually the organization link activities on the local level with maybe the global level?
Cordaid is an international development agency that works on building flourishing and resilient communities in the most fragile areas of this world. We work in 38 countries from our head office that is based in The Hague, the Netherlands, and we have 10 country offices in different countries around this world. We collaborate with local partners, local organizations, totaling 800 all over this world. These are our partners that we work with and who actually do the work on the ground. How do we link local to national and international? In the past, we used to maybe support local initiatives and saying, okay, this is a good project for a certain community. But during the years, we of course discovered that while one project may benefit one population or one community, it will not solve the problems of a fragile region as such. In order to do so, you have to link the local to the national level, and you have to link it up to the international level in order to have sustainable development for all, for the whole region. So what we do is, I'll give you a concrete example of Afghanistan on how we do this. Of course, with the 10 years transition that is now on its way in Afghanistan, and with the withdrawal of the NATO forces, everyone's fear is how will the withdrawal of these forces affect the situation of women in Afghanistan. That is high on the agenda of the international community. It is high on the agenda of the Afghan government and also of NATO. Cordaid has developed a tool that we call the Transition Monitor, that is in fact a research in 9 provinces in Afghanistan that looks at the daily situation of Afghan women. It monitors their daily situation on different aspects, such as health, education, but also their freedom of movement and their level of security. We collect these data from the 9 provinces and we write them down in a report that is then used for international lobby activities on different levels. Again, Afghanistan government, NATO levels, European level. One concrete example of a recommendation that came out of this monitor is the necessity for police forces to have special attention for women, because with the withdrawal of the international forces, it is the Afghanistan police that is, of course, the national police that will be responsible for the daily security of women on the streets in their communities. What became clear from this research is that women fear that, in fact, the most. How can the national Afghanistan police force provide security in the daily lives of women?
It seems to me that in a way the activities of Cordaid are complementary, not just complementary in terms of obviously what the local partner institutions are doing, but also complementary in terms of what the international institutions do. How actually does all of this work in this framework?
Yes, I'm not sure if it is complementary, but one focus of Cordaid is always, the local community. If we look at security and justice issues, we see many rule of law programs in the different countries. And of course, in fragile countries, fragile regions, if you look at South Sudan, that is the first necessity. We have to build up state institutions. But one downside of these rule of law programs is that you may have some sort of functioning system, some sort of functioning institutions at government level. That does not necessarily mean that people on the ground, the local communities, know about these institutions, have access to the institutions, that these institutions answer to the needs of these people. So where we come in is the focus on these communities. How can we sit together with local communities, be it in South Sudan or in Congo, and have them express their needs specifically, have them sit together with representatives of the police, of the legal system, of the authorities, and sit together and draw up a common agenda, defining their needs, but defining also an action plan. What can you do to improve my daily security? And the interesting thing is, if people sit together in that way, it helps in drawing up a common agenda, as we call it, but it also helps creating understanding of the different institutions and different functions. Because, as I said, local people often are not even aware of the existence of the formal system and tend to go to the informal systems.
From the perspective of Cordaid, what would you say are the security needs, and what is security and justice for normal people, if you wish, regular people that live in the fragile states?
Well, that is, of course, a fascinating subject that is very, very, well, now you get me started, because it has so many different aspects. And peace, of course, is not the silence of guns, and it's not the ceasefire, and it's not that there is no open conflict. Peace is so much more than that. That is what we call the ceasefire and the agreements, which of course are all the first steps and very necessary, but what we tend to call the negative peace. Okay, so there's no open conflict, but do people have access to healthcare? Do people have access to education? Are women allowed to walk safely in the street? So again, there we look at local level, what is needed, what does it mean for the people on the ground? And the interesting thing, of course, is that the needs of women and men can be greatly different in different settings, but also in one specific settings. You have to always look at the needs of the women. For example, I was in the Democratic Republic of Congo last year, and I was discussing security issues in a certain region with the mayor of a community. And I said, well, there's been insecurity in this region, rebel groups moving around, and what are your measures? What are you proposing? And then he said, oh, well, I've just closed down the road that is over there. I gave a curfew from 7 o'clock in the evening until 6 o'clock in the morning. And I said, well, that is very interesting, and how has that reduced the level of insecurity? And he says, okay, because now the rebels can't come into this region. And I said, okay, but now I am a woman who lives far away in this community. My daily security is maybe not so much affected by the rebels moving over that road. But my daily security is far more affected by things that are going on in my own community, by regular criminality, so to say. I've worked on my field during the whole year, and then robbers come in and take away all of my harvest. So that is the daily effects of insecurity on women's life. So closing down the road may be a good measure for the overall security of a region, but may not be the best measure for one specific woman in one specific community. So this is for us always the starting point, where we say, what are the needs of the people? What are the needs of the community? And then you come across real eye-openers also for myself, because if we talk about conflict regions and insecurity and fragile regions, you always tend to think conflict and arms and violence, which is of course a daily reality also. But if you go to Burundi and you talk to the communities and you say, now what is your major concern? It is, for example, this issue of your harvest being stolen after 1 year of work, and you not being able to feed your children, and not being able to sell part of your harvest on the market, and not being able to send your children to school. So apart from the violence and the open violence and the conflict and the insecurity, the daily lives of people are affected in a very different manner also.
This was a very insightful interview. We have gained a lot of information about an organization that is very active in the domain of development. Thank you very much. We could say much more, of course, about the organization. We have some links on our page to your organization, so we are very happy to provide this to our students. Thank you.